Welcome all. My name is Wilder, and I'm doing blacksmithing and metallurgy. So I started off with a really big interest in blacksmithing and just metal in general, mostly from my father back there in the corner, who did a lot of welding, and I spent a lot of time in the shop as a little kid. No, don't touch that, that's hot, sort of thing. Okay, and so knowing I really liked this, I wanted to do something around it for my Senior X. Now, how do you come up with something to learn other than just like making stuff? So I decided to delve into the metallurgy bit of it. This is my essential question. What can I learn about metallurgy by doing more blacksmithing? And the difference between metallurgy and blacksmithing is very, very little. Metallurgy is like the science of it. What makes it up, and what is metal and what does it do, sort of thing. And blacksmithing is shaping the metal as well as getting it to do different things that you want it to do. So my prior knowledge, I had a lot of just basic knowledge of shop mechanics. A little bit of thermodynamics and crystalline structure from what little blacksmithing I've done before. And I keep looking up there, and I have it all down here. So I went into this with just sort of basic knowledge of blacksmithing in general, not quite so much of like how it all works, just if you heat it up to this temperature and you put it in that water, it does this to it. But that's not like everything of it. So I went out to find a mentor. Unfortunately, I knew Mr. Jeff Toman, also through my father. Jeff is a blacksmith by trade and welder and basically overall handyman. He does everything amazing with metal. He spent most of his earlier years in the boatyards working on boats, welding things. And he's a resident of Somersville. And this is him. And also back there. And so he does a lot of art with his blacksmithing. He does tables and chairs and hooks and things. They look really cool. So in my first presentation, I had to go through some terms a bit because I tend to get rolling on things and people don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to talk about annealing. Annealing is the process of taking metal and heating up to a constant temperature to get the crystals of the metal to relax. Sort of like if you bend a stick really far and it's almost snapping, and then you sort of release it, sort of the same thing, but it's keeping that bent shape. Tempering. Tempering is the heating of your metal and cooling it at a specific rate to change the makeup of it in such a way that it becomes either tougher or harder. The difference between those is harder is much more brittle. I have things to show. This piece of metal is very, very tough down here and very hard up here. So up here I can snap it off like I did multiple times. So if you look here, we can see the crystals in the metal actually get smaller as they go forward. This one not quite so much. Bigger down here, smaller down here. Go ahead and pass those around. I've got little bits for everyone. So if you look into one end or another of these, you will see what the crystals sort of look like. So I'm just going to sort of like wind through everyone here, give everyone a little piece to look at. So tempering changes the size of those crystals in the piece and makes it harder by getting bigger crystals. So you could drive through a wall with it, admittedly, but if you dropped it on the ground, it would shatter, potentially. Something that's really tough, you can beat it to snot, like this piece here. Or actually, no, I'm going to take it back. This piece was a piece of round rod that we hammered out to a square, and then flattened, punched a hole in it, and bent it over. So something that's very hard, for instance, like whatever happened to the rod, it's over there. Yeah, that thing. That thing, if you whack it with a hammer, it breaks. As you can see, it broke and made all those little pieces. Also pass that around if people want, just because it's kind of cool and funky. Now, one other thing that we go into is oxidization. Oxidization is when you heat metal up, it begins to react with oxygen in the atmosphere. It makes lots of really funky colors. So, which, yeah, we'll come back to that. So, first off, in order to do all of these things, you need a forge. This is a diagram of a forge. Aha, I got my poker stick. So, a forge is just basically a big pile of coal that you force air up through and burn. So, you have your regular coal here, which is just like lumps. It comes out of the ground like that. And as you heat it, it begins to turn into coke. Coke is what actually burns. And that's like all the little dinosaur-y bits that burn. So you force air up through, and it superheats this coal by forcing more air into it. Sort of like your furnace. Without the air, it's just a fire. Sort of like if you take a campfire and you put a box fan next to it, it starts really roaring, right? Same idea. So in this, you would insert your pieces of metal somewhere in here to be heated. Now, depending on how long you leave it in there, it gets how hot. And different heats mean you can do different things to it. Now, when you heat something up, it starts out gray. Actually, I have a diagram here. Might be this one. I'm sorry. Here we go. Nope, that's the wrong one. So right here we have a graph of different colors and different temperatures. So right down here at the very bottom at like about 600 degrees, it says dark red, blood red, or dark red. That's about the lowest temperature that you want to be heating things to so that you can move it. The higher the temperature, the more white it gets. And the more white it gets, the easier it is to move. The saying goes, looks like butter, moves like butter. So I can attest to two people who agree with that. So this is from the book New Edge of the Anvil, which is really, 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 really handy if you want to become a blacksmith. It has everything you need in it. And this picture here is from the $50 Knife Shop, which is another really great book for if you want to do stuff on like $50. Make an awesome thing. So getting back to oxidization and the colors. Okay, pay no attention to the tempering. This is both tempering and oxidization. So it's harder and makes different colors, lots of fancy colors. So this is your normal piece of steel, just a billet that you have, okay? Piece of leaf spring, all right? Comes for your car, you can heat it up. So this is just your piece of steel. When you quench it, aka you put it in the fire and then you take it out of the fire and you stick it in a bucket of water. It becomes sort of this duller gray color. When you heat it to around 350, you get a little bit more yellow. 400 is straw yellow, or yeah, straw yellow. 440 is sort of more golden. And I'm not going to tell you about the rest of them. You can see what temperature it is, what color it makes. Now, when you heat it up to these different temperatures, it's growing the crystal size inside your piece of metal. So it's becoming harder. Now, this piece here, up at 730 degrees, is really, really hard. It also is that steel gray, is what they call it. It's really, really hard. Now, if I want to get it softer, I'd have to bring it back up to, whatever it is, 350 degrees, leave it there for like 3 hours, cool it down for an hour, bring it back up to 400 degrees, cool it down for an hour. it's a really complicated process that takes a lot of time because you have to, yeah, I won't get into that. Anyway, so and all of this crystal stuff is in this college textbook, Metallurgy. It's really, really, really dense and awful to read through. So by heating these things up, you get all these really pretty colors, which is what happens when you have oxygen mixing with things and whatnot. Now, this is a piece of copper flashing. I actually have right here. And what we did with this is we ran a blowtorch over it. Now, oxidization doesn't just happen in steel, it happens in any metal, as you can see in copper. And your hottest spots are going to go through the colors very quickly, very rapidly, because heat dissipates through your piece of metal. You can't just heat one corner and it stays just one corner. Well, you can sort of do that like with this piece, which is very, very thick, and thus the heat is very, very localized. And so, yeah, we'll pass it back around this way. So when you heat it up, you get these different colors, and if you want an overall color, you have to be very, very careful about where you put your heat and how long you leave it there. Otherwise, you sort of get spots like this. Now, if you take something more like this piece, I think that's the right side of it. Maybe it's not. Maybe it is. Yeah, sure. You get more, you can get a wider range of colors, and they use that a lot on gun barrels. You know, if you get a blued gun barrel, of course they do it differently. They use chemicals and whatnot to make it more even and equal. But this is where it originally came from, is taking something very, very hot and sticking it in it for a set amount of time. Now, if I go back a couple of slides here, oh, too far, there we go. These are exact temperatures. They've learned through trial and error and science, I'm not really sure what science, metallurgy, that it is exactly 440 degrees that this bar will turn this color. And so you can also, that allows you to tell what temperature your piece is and thus how hard or soft it is for whatever you're trying to make by what color it's turning. And if it goes through, you know, if it suddenly is this color and then it's bam, that color, then you sort of ruined the piece and you gotta reheat it and reset it. Great thing about metal, you can always make it work. It's not like wood, where if you cut something off, you have to glue something back on. No, metal, you just cut it off, you weld it back on, you got a new piece. Anyway, where was I at? Oh, I was here, right. Now, the biggest thing about the difference between blacksmithing and metallurgy at this point, doing this is metallurgy, making colors, making it harder or softer. Blacksmithing incorporates those into it, but it's more about making something, like this, which is coat hanger. This was a straight piece of round stock, which is just a straight piece of rod, and if you heat it up, and you heat up just this end here, then you can pound it out. You take an anvil and you go ba 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 ba, and you draw it out, which basically you hit it with a hammer until it gets longer. And then you can continue to heat. If you don't heat this quite so much, then you don't have to deal with a floppy piece of metal, which is very unusual. So you heat up this end and you can round it around. Ooh, crap. Stop messing with the thing, Wilder. Yeah. And so another big thing, especially blacksmiths do, if you go back a couple 100 years, is they made gates or pins or nails. They made, let's go with the gates thing. A lot of people will commission a handmade gate for their private estate or whatever. Now, in doing so, you got to have a long rod and you punch a hole in it like this, like that, and you drive another rod through it. Now, to do that, you got to heat it up really hot, so that's bright yellow, and you take a punch and you pound it down through. So you get, yes, 5 minutes, thank you. So you get this nice hole. Unfortunately, I can't get that nice of a hole out of that little thing. As you can see, I'm new at this. I've talked a lot about metal. I should probably move on to other things like in the project. Some of the challenges I've faced are, or some of the challenges blacksmithing faces as well as I do, is blacksmithing is really sort of a dying art. Not many people do it anymore because of machines. You get a machine, you can do it. If you can get a machine to do it, then who needs the person, right? Now, it's also really, really complex, and there's a lot of memorization to it, of knowing what temperature turns at what color, and at that temperature, what does it do? How hard does it become? How soft does it become? Now, no, crap. Haha, saved by the thing. It's also really kind of dangerous. You're dealing with metal that looks like just a piece of metal, but it could look exactly like this and be 500 degrees. So you touch it, and you pull your hand away, and there's your skin. Really not fun. Jeff can attest to that. We'll pass that around too. So this is another really thick piece that we did some funky colors on. I may have put my slides out of order. One of the biggest challenges I faced was finding time to work with my mentor, Jeff, to do these things. Now, I can do all kinds of research here at the school, but all the research in the world doesn't amount to anything if you can't pick it up and show it to somebody, and then they can understand. So that was the biggest, hardest thing for me, was finding time and doing all these different pieces that I have so I can show them to you today. This is a piece that really shows off the grain structure that went around somewhere. It's a little piece. But so this piece is very, very tough. Very, very hard, because all of the crystals are very large in it. Now, compared to this piece, which the crystals are very, very small, which is what you get when you just buy a piece of metal out of the store. I'm running out of time. I should probably keep moving. So that gives you the difference between hard, tough. So what from this is, it's really, blacksmithing, you really are never done learning. And there's blacksmiths who are 80, 60, 70, 80, and they still complain about not knowing enough. Yes, they can do all these amazing things that they know, but they want to know more. And there's no way you could ever learn all of it. And so this is sort of my little one step towards learning as much as I can, because it's really a passion of mine, and especially my father's. So that's what I like to do, and so I want to learn more from it. It sort of ties in also with engineering and welding. And sort of in that same neighborhood, they're all sort of, how do we take this piece of metal and make it do what we want to do this? And so ties in there. It's just different ways of getting to it. The really only way to learn a lot about this is to be an apprentice. There are currently master smiths out there who are looking for apprentices. I don't know if I want to go that route, but it leaves it open, sort of. So going from here, sort of on the same thing, we are currently building our own forge, so we can do this at home and have lots of fun with fire and metal and sparks and things. And as I touched on before, the possible apprenticeship and just continuing doing what I like. So in closing, I want to say thank you to my mentor, Jeff Toman, for being the awesome dude that he is. The senior exhibition class for getting my butt in gear and to do this. I don't know, it's a class you have to take. The MDI EEF grant for their generous contribution to buying coal, which is really, really important. You can't burn things if you don't have coal. And my parents for all they've done and their support. And yeah, so thank you.
Wilder. Okay, questions from the panel?
Go for it.
Are you thinking about going to college for maybe like a chemistry degree after this? Because you can always do that. That would be, I think that would be really good, especially if you want to learn more about metallurgy. Have you thought about that?
I have thought about it. It's it's really hard to pick one thing that I want to go to college for. Admittedly, they all sort of work together. Chemistry definitely interests me, and it ties in a lot with the metallurgy aspect of things of what can I add. I add this and this, and it makes this better to do this. So yes, there's a little bit of thought there, but I'm not entirely sure. Yes?
I'm curious about that, I think you call that a coat hook.
Oh, yes.
Like how do you,
Where is the coat
how
hook?
long does it actually take, how many times did you have to heat that, manipulate it, reheat it, like what?
Overall time for this entire piece was probably, well, it was probably 20 minutes. But heating it, it doesn't take very long for a piece to cool down, especially when it's outside. So I probably heated this, I'm gonna say roughly 15 times. So you stick it in the fire, you pull it out, you whack it, and you might get like that much done. You get just that piece. And then you stick it back in the fire, you know, because it's cooled down, you can't whack it anymore. So you heat it back up and you pull it out and you whack it some more and you get, you know, that much done, let's say. So
So are you drawn to the, like you were talking about engineering, but are you drawn to the sort of artistic, like sort of, I mean Jeff's done it all, but kind of what he does and,
yeah,
or more to the engineering or all of it or?
I'm really interested in all of it. I'm more interested in the artistic aspect and the tool making aspect. That's mostly what it's used for today is in blacksmithing is making tools, you know, center punches, hammers, these things. A little bit in the engineering, but again, it's a little bit easier to go and buy a piece that you need that does the thing instead of having to try and make it, you know, 20 minutes for this. You know, if I'm trying to make really some big complex spiral thing, you know, that's like 6 days. Because you got to heat it up and hammer it out, and it's just a long process. So I'd say I'm interested in the engineering aspect, but more for different reasons. Yes.
Is the color of the metal that you're forging the only thing that you're doing to monitor the heat, or is there some sort of a thermal measurement?
Actually, most of it is by the color of the metal. Not so much all of the different colors that you saw, but the change between dark red and dazzling white.
Okay.
I might have a chart thing here. No, that's the wrong one.
Well, that's okay.
And anyway, there are some ways that you can go about telling it. They make crayons that melt at different heats. That you can you make a mark here and make a mark there with 3 different ones, let's say. And when it reaches a certain temperature, it melts away. And you know, oh, it's at 500 degrees now. But mostly it's from the color of it. That's why a lot of blacksmith shops are really dark and dingy, so you can see the colors.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And kind of a follow-up question, and
All
I
right.
think I know the answer, but
I'll do my best.
Can you go backwards with a piece of metal, or on those different colors, would you always be moving to the right?
Nope, you can actually go backwards. Let's see. You've got all the stuff. You're a hog. Especially on this piece right here. If I were to take a grinder and go over it, because it's a very thin layer of this that actually gives you that color. So I could probably rub it off with my hand. So it gets rid of the color. It doesn't get rid of
Does it get rid of the property?
It does not get rid of the property. In order to do that, you would have to reheat it and bring its temperature down slowly so the crystals realign. You'd have to anneal it, in other words.
That's fascinating.
Yes.
Does that come easy to you? Does it feel intuitive, or are you like, oh, it's going to take me forever to figure out the colors, or is that something that
It's
I'm curious about that?
Some of it's intuitive. I had very good basics in it, courtesy of yours truly. But it's a heck of a lot of memorization, and really the best way to learn it is to just do it more, sort of like driving a car. So yes and no.
And you're building a forge at home? Or-
Yes. Yes. Yep. Jeff's is great, but we'd like to have a little bit bigger one. So. Yep. Yes, Becca.
So where are you thinking about going with this afterwards? Are you gonna be doing it like with your dad and Jeff, or are you gonna be doing something else with it?
I'd like to. I'm going to do it a lot with my father, especially. I'd like to do some more with Jeff, but it's also I've got a lot of personal projects I want to work on. Like I want to make a hammer. You know, it's a really cool thing to make. Make a hammer with a hammer. So that would be sort of where it goes. And it's just I've been warned against using the word hobby, but it really sort of it's an extreme hobby of mine.
Are you
And
thinking about making like any profits off of it, like in an art way or a tools way?
it would be really nice to someday in the future to have my own shop where I can do all this stuff and potentially sell it. As of immediate future, that's not really something that's super high on the list. Yeah.
Is it common for a metals to work with another forging person in the same shop? Is that, I mean, it must pose challenges for safety, like moving around each other. Like I'm
Yep.
watching glass blowing, it's pretty intense. Like you have to be really alert.
Um,
Does it feel the same way or?
Generally, you'll have one, in a blacksmith shop, you'll have one master smith, and you'll have a range of apprentices, you know, whether it's one, none, and helpers. Right at the moment, forging is sort of all-inclusive. They do forging, they do welding, they do casting, they do big things, they do little things. So it's sort of up to the smith whether he wants to work alone or not. And if he doesn't want to work alone, there's plenty of people willing to come and work. And yes, it is very dangerous because you have to watch out because, you know, this piece laying here, you know, with nothing on it, you know, you go and grab it and your fingers stick to it, you know, whoops, that's 500 degrees.
Is it loud? Is the
Yes, it is very loud.
so there's a lot
Thank
of,
you, Miss Muzzy.
I imagine it's a lot of unspoken communication.
Yes, yes, there's a lot of that thing, give it to me. Yeah.
Exciting. Are you guys set with questions? Okay, so questions from the audience.
Anyone, someone, no one, one, okay.
How long have you been interested in blacksmithing and metallurgy?
A very, very long time. Basically since he went to Haystack and came back with this awesome, like ram's head that he made out of a piece of bar stock. I was like, ooh, that's really cool. I want to be able to do things like that. And I was like, I don't know, I was like 6 or 7. So, a very long time. No one has any other questions? I answered everyone's questions? Woohoo.
Okay, well, thank you again, Wilder.